It is time for another version of Husker Chat. I am Jason Jorgensen. We are joined by Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online, as we talk Husker football. Well, Sean, a lot was made about last week's big game at home against Ohio State. Looked like it was a great weekend until the game started. Certainly a disappointing performance for the Huskers.
Yeah, about the highlight of that game, Jason, was it was under 3 hours. I mean, there wasn't much more to take away from Saturday. I mean, it was really one of the more dominating opponent performances we've seen in Memorial Stadium. Obviously, 2017 Ohio State, 2007 USC, 2007 Oklahoma State. There just haven't been a lot of games like Saturday in Memorial Stadium where the Huskers were just thoroughly dominated from start to finish. And that was probably the most disappointing part. I think most realistic fans knew that, you know what, it would a win over the Buckeyes is a long shot. But I think people wanted a performance that at least delivered some promise that, you know what, they are taking steps in the right direction. And that obviously didn't happen Saturday. So, you know, lots to look at and you know, be concerned about now as Nebraska moves in these final 7 games.
When you look back at that game and how Nebraska was dominated, what surprised you the most about the struggles the Huskers had?
Just how it started from the beginning. I mean, Nebraska gets a penalty on the opening kickoff. It puts them inside the 10-yard line on their first possession. I mean, nothing would go right for Nebraska, but I thought Nebraska's front 7 would have fared better against the run. I thought Nebraska's linebackers really struggled. Mohamed Barry was the lowest graded starter for Nebraska's defense on Pro Football Focus. So the defensive line, I don't think did that bad, particularly Darian Daniels and Khalil Davis, but those linebackers really had no impact when it came to stepping up and stopping the run. And that had been a strength for Nebraska, Jason, was how Nebraska played against the run. And Ohio State's offensive line just physically dominated that game.
How about the Husker offense? We knew coming into this year this was a young offense. You know, some newcomers up front. Adrian Martinez has certainly struggled this year. What's your take on that, and how do the Huskers get this fixed?
Well, it's easy to say it's all Adrian Martinez right now. That's been the problem, but I think it's a lot of different areas. On the offensive line, I mean, Matt Farniak gave up 6 quarterback pressures. You know, they didn't drop back to pass a ton in that game. So every time he dropped back, he was hurried or pressured, missed protections. Snaps have been off the mark all season. And, you know, to a common fan, they don't realize how big of a deal that is. But the average snap, when it's off the target or over his head or he's jumping for it, that throws the playoff 0.2 to 0.3 seconds. And that's a huge deal for the timing and rhythm of how this offense operates. So that's been an issue. Nebraska's wide receivers have not been able to win at the line of scrimmage. We saw that Saturday. They struggled to get open in the press man coverage. The perimeter blocking has not been solid either. So there's collectively a lot of issues that we've seen with the offense. And it's easy to say it's all Martinez, but I think it runs a lot deeper than that right now.
Today on Husker Chat, we are joined by the publisher of Husker Online, Sean Callahan, as we talk Husker football. Sean, you've been at this a while. Of course, there's a ton of activity on your website and on your message boards. But how would you gauge Husker Nation right now with how year number 2 has gone for Coach Frost?
I think people are still on board for the most part. There's always going to be people that question things or vocal about things, especially after a loss like Saturday. But I think if anything, Saturday was a gut check that, you know what, this is not going to be easier than we thought. It's going to take time. It's going to take work. You know, we live in a world now where we want it now and we want to skip steps to get it now. And I think Saturday showed us all that Nebraska, to get to that level of Ohio State, it doesn't happen in just a year and a half. It takes, you know, a long time. I mean, think about Ohio State. This is the 8th year of the Urban Meyer blueprint he laid down there. So you're looking at a program that had 8 consecutive years of that compared to where Nebraska's at with Scott Frost. So it's just going to take time, and in the world that we live in, that's really hard for people to grasp.
Well, up next, the Huskers are back in action on Saturday at home against Northwestern. They have struggled themselves coming off winning the Big Ten West Championship last year. What's your take on the Wildcats? I watched a little bit of their game with Wisconsin. They certainly had a chance there late to try to get back into it, but how do you see this matchup for the Huskers?
Yeah, they're a team that offensively is struggling. I mean, they're one of the worst offenses in the country right now. Hunter Johnson, their transfer quarterback from Clemson, was a 5-star recruit out of high school, and he has not looked the part. His completion percentage is well under 50%. He's only thrown one touchdown pass. I know going into the Wisconsin game, Northwestern's offense had only scored 5 touchdowns on the season. So they have not been a very dynamic unit. They've played a very tough schedule. And, you know, what's scary for Northwestern is they have Nebraska, then they have Ohio State and Iowa. So this is kind of a desperation must-win game for their season. Otherwise, they could be looking at a 1-6 record going into the back half of the schedule. And, you know, we've seen this with Pat Fitzgerald's teams. Last year, they started out 0-3, and then, you know, they finished the year, winning all their games. So anything can happen with Northwestern, as we've seen over the years, but it's clear to me they're not good on offense. They still have a very good front seven on defense. They'll cause problems. The key for me, Jason, is special teams. Nebraska needs to make Northwestern drive the field. If you give them short fields, obviously that's going to play into their offense's hands.
As you alluded to, as these two teams look forward, they each have to look at this one as this is a game they have to get.
Yeah, and you know, for Nebraska, I think this week in Minnesota, these are kind of toss-up games. Nebraska is about a 7-8 point favorite Saturday. I think at Minnesota, it's going to be a very, very close line, probably 3 or 4 points either direction. So these are toss-up games, Jason, that will really write the script of this year too. If Nebraska can get to 5-2, all of a sudden you feel pretty good about it going into the final 5 games of the season. But if they split or lose both these games, you're just hoping at that point to make a bowl game. So I think for Nebraska, they really need to come out and win these next 2 games if they want this season to kind of get back on the track that you expect it to be on going here into year 2.
All right, hopefully things go much better this Saturday. As always, we appreciate your time and your insights.
Thank you, Jason.
And that was Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online. For Husker Chat, I'm Jason Jorgensen. Hi, this is Jason Jorgensen, Sports Director at KRVN. Thanks for watching our YouTube video. Keep up to date with everything we have going on with our sports coverage. You can find that, and we'd love to have you subscribe to our channel. Just hit the little red button in the right corner.